Welcome to the Story Talks Back. Almost everything that we remember, think about, or imagine is a story. Stories entertain us, inform us, and even define us. They have upsides, and they have downsides. This podcast explores the power of story in every aspect of our lives. I'm Dave Stanton. Thank you for joining us. Award-winning author Dean Sluyter has taught meditation since 1970, from maximum security prisons to the Guatemalan rainforest. A grateful student of Eastern and Western sages in several traditions, he's completed numerous pilgrimages and retreats in India, Tibet, Nepal, and the West. His latest book, The Dharma Bum's Guide to Western Literature, Finding Nirvana in the Classics, reflects his lifelong exploration of the awakening process, as well as his years as a prep school English teacher. Sluyter's other books include Fear Less, Natural Meditation, The Zen Commandments, and Cinema Nirvana. Well, hey, Dean, it's great to welcome you back to the Story Talks Back.
Thank you so much, David. It's so good to be back here again.
It's great to have you as my first returning guest.
Right. How long has the podcast been going now?
Approaching 2 years.
Oh, that's great.
Crazy, right?
Time flies when you're having quarantine.
Right?
Yeah.
And some fun.
Yeah.
So we did talk last time about stories and storytellers in your past. Remember you talked about Winnie the Pooh, and have you had any other thoughts about stories and storytellers in your history since the last couple of years?
Well, I have to stipulate two things. One is I don't remember anything about what we talked about last time.
No worries.
It's not personal. There's a whole lot of things I don't remember. And the other thing is, since we spoke last, I wrote and published a new book called The Dharma Bum's Guide to Western Literature, which is about books, stories. So I've been, very much saturated with the works that I wrote about in that book. The subtitle, Finding Nirvana in the Classics. And, that's my passion, is finding Nirvana wherever possible. Turns out
Right.
everywhere is possible if you look deep enough. So those are the stories that are on my mind right now.
Right. There is one formative story that you include in the book, which is, it's fairly brief, but you talk about Alfred E. Newman and
Yeah.
his famous saying, which was sort of like the 3 words that launched you in a way.
Yes, that's actually the very beginning of the book. When I sit down to write a book, I go, there's a lot of churning and false starts and all that. For me, anyway, the key moment is when I get the first sentence. For instance, when I wrote Cinema Nirvana, Enlightenment Lessons from the Movies, when I got the first sentence, that was Tibetan temples smell like popcorn, right? Which is true. And I go on to explain it's because of the butter lamps that have been burning there on the altars for centuries. And when you walk through the temples, the floors, the stone floors are sticky under your feet, like in a messy movie theater. So with this one, when I got the first sentence, which was I found my first guru on the cover of Mad Magazine, I knew I was okay. So the story is, and here's the book, by the way, and the story is that, true story, in 1961, I was 11 or 12 years old. And my mom sent me out to the garage to clean out the back seat of our Nash Rambler station wagon because we were going to be going to a drive-in movie that night. So I had to clear out all the toys and the comic books that my two brothers and I had left there. And my mind in those days, already at the ripe young age of 11 or 12, had a habit of just churning all the time, just bunk, 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 all this kind of anxiety-laden inner conversation going on that I think a lot of people are familiar with. But at that point, I was already so habituated to it that I didn't realize I was caught up in that because I was caught up in that, you know?
Sure.
So I'm out there in the garage by myself picking up these comic books. And the next one that I pick up is a Mad magazine. And on the cover is, actually, I got to put the picture in the book here. On the cover, as usual, is Mad's grinning idiot mascot, Alfred E. Newman. And as usual, there's his slogan, "What? Me worry?" And suddenly my mind stopped. It just went completely deliciously silent. And what happened was I realized that that anxious churning that was going on habitually in my mind is suddenly I realized that that was in fact a thing that was going on, that it was called worry, and that I was doing it. That the reason that that engine, so to speak, was revving all the time was that my foot was on the gas. It wasn't happening to me, I was doing it. And having suddenly seen that clearly, really just like a lightning bolt of clarity, having seen that, I knew, oh, I can take my foot off the gas pedal. And my mind went silent. And really at that moment, it was as if the top of my head opened up and merged with the sky. And really I went into what, some not too long later, about 5-6 years later, when I started reading books of Eastern wisdom, I went, oh, this is called samadhi or satori, or over on the other side of the ocean, it's called grace. And it's not just some weird freak thing. It's what it's all about. It's the fundamental beingness of life. It's been known by sages for centuries, and you don't have to wait for it to happen to you accidentally like that. You can cultivate it systematically through meditative practices.
So you learned the Four Noble Truths from Alfred E. Newman in an instant.
Yeah, well, I learned not the whole Four Noble Truths. I got the truth about samadhi, right? But as far as the fact that, oh, yeah, right. No, I got three now that you mentioned that. Okay, I got, oh, this churning going on, this anxiety is suffering. That's the first noble truth, right? And oh, guess what? The suffering doesn't come from outside; it comes from inside. Second noble truth. And because I'm the one that's doing it, that's the best of all possible news. That means I can stop doing it. So yeah, I got 3 out of 4 noble truths. And then the fourth, which took a few years to pick up, was, oh, and then you practice. The fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, is you keep practicing to cultivate that, to integrate it more permanently into your life.
Right. I mean, I think, to me, there's a connection between, there's connections all over the book, but, there's a connection for me between The Cat in the Hat and Alfred E. Newman, in the sense that they're both tricksters, they're both, kind of anarchists. And they also, they speak, or they're associated with very simple statements, which, like, the cat in the hat is, it's fun to have fun, but you have to know how,
Right.
or, how that bump made us jump. Those statements are so simple, and yet they're so powerful. I wonder if you feel, in terms of looking at stories from a Dharma perspective, is simplicity a benefit?
Yeah, simplicity, you know, this came out of me the other day in a meditation session I was conducting. This was one in New Jersey. You were there last
I was
Sunday.
going to say, was I there?
That's right. You were. And and what I heard myself saying was, anytime you find yourself puzzling over which way to go in a meditation, any kind of spiritual practice, is it this way or this way? Ask yourself, which way is simpler? Which way is simpler? And usually that's a pretty good guide, because the ultimate truth, that sounds like a pompous phrase, but what all the sages, all the traditions, and increasingly our own experience through our own practice tells us, all the ultimate truth, beingness, is infinitely simple. It just is. It has no features. It's not hot or cold, big or small, male or female, new or old. It's just, we have to say a word, so we can say it just is. And even that's too much, because it's not is as opposed to not is. But it's is my sometimes favorite word for it. So what we're trying to do all the time if you're teaching Dharma, if you're trying to convey it through and guiding people in meditation, and I think that this great literature in its in its highest moments, there may be a whole very complex web of character and story and all that, but everyone in the stories is searching for something simple. They usually miss it because it's so simple. There's a thing they say actually in 12-step programs. It's a simple program for complicated people. So yeah, it's kind of like that. So yeah, I had most of what I have in this book is what we usually would think of as classic literature in the English language. So I have Macbeth and Moby Dick, Huckleberry Finn, The Great Gatsby, um, um, uh, To the Lighthouse, Virginia Woolf. I've got the slave narrative of Frederick Douglass. So for some pretty serious stuff, but I also have The Cat in the Hat. That was fun. I also have Oklahoma, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Oklahoma. That ends up, the high point of that is the most simple statement of what's what, which is, okay, Oklahoma, okay.
Right.
And I take a page or two. Of course, I get something simple and I have to complicate it with a lot of unpacking to show how much is contained in that simple thing. And I have a whole lot of fun with the history of that expression, okay. My favorite description of samadhi, satori, nirvana, the indescribable, my best stab at describing the indescribable, is because partly to pull the rug out from under all these notions that people have. Oh, it's like having a 24/7 orgasm and fireworks shooting out of your ears and all that. Is what I say is infinite okayness. So I had a great time realizing, oh yeah, okay. What is okay? Oh, as in om, is beingness, weightless, textureless, colorless, infinite beingness. And then K is the hard sound. Even the forms of the letters. O is like, the just infinite, boundless, 360-degree. And then the K is like the arrowhead hitting the wall. Then we hit the wall of material life where we have to take action.
And
Okay.
I mean, I think one thing that does strike me is that in some of the books, the main character or someone in the book has it figured out, like the Cat in the Hat again. You have a sense that he's got all of this under control, and everybody else is kind of so confused by him, right? Whereas in other books, the central characters really are caught up, and still very confused.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any sense about whether that's more relatable, or how do those two sort of structures work in terms of storytelling and Dharma?
Well, I'm trying to think uh, who else has it figured. The cat, I would not say the cat has it under control. The cat is he's the spirit of anarchy, and he's um, he's moksha, he's liberation, he's or as kids all over the world call it, wee. And he but yeah, ultimately he's the teacher. He's the Buddha there. I have a lot of fun with the picture. I like to play with iconography. I spent some time in Tibet with a wonderful Buddhist teacher that Charles Janu, um, taking us through temple after temple, seeing one tanka and rupa after another, all these figures of various Buddhas, and him explaining how, well, this one's holding this many fingers up and this one's hands in this position, and how it all reflects different aspects of the unfolding of our inherent enlightenment. So I do the same thing with the picture of the cat in the hat striding through the door. He's over, as you're looking at the double page spread, he's over on the right, and over on the left are the two kids who, the presenting problem in the cat in the hat is it's raining outside, they can't go out and play, so they had to sit, and we did not like it, not one little bit.
Mhm.
Of course, that's what you do on meditation retreat. You sit, and a whole
Right.
lot of the time you don't like it, not one little bit. And meditate, and as I explained, the history, meditation retreats originated when the Buddha was leading his hundreds of followers in their homeless wanderings around northern India, but you couldn't do that during the monsoon season. So they would find some abandoned building or cave and sit, and that's when they would retreat. So the cat comes in, and crossing from the viewer's right to the left, in theater, that's an uphill cross. It goes counter to the direction that we read in. So when someone crosses from the audience's left to their right, that's like an easy cross. When they're going from the right to the left, that's uphill. They're going to disrupt the established order. And
Mm.
that's what the cat is doing as he strides through the door. And then I have a lot of fun showing the parallel between that and the iconography of the Calling of Saint Matthew by Caravaggio, which, when I was in Rome once some years ago, this was in this little French cathedral near our hotel, and I kept having to go back and look at this painting. It was so powerful. And here's Jesus with St. Peter tagging along with him, crossing from the right, just like the cat in the hat, to disrupt things. Over here on the left is the about to become Saint Matthew with his fellow tax collectors counting their ill-gotten gains, because tax collectors in those days were basically like, mafia collectors, right?
Right.
There's a protection racket basically, and here's the about to become Saint Matthew looking up in this startled way, like a deer in the heaven light. Jesus is coming through the door on this big tractor of divine light, and I went, whoa, it's the Cat in the Hat,
But this whole
about to show Matthew that it's fun to have fun, but you have to know how.
but this whole thing of the trickster, like Huck Finn, these
Yeah.
people who are so disruptive, and that really is what, the Dharma and the teachings are. They're so simple, and yet they're so threatening to the traditional order, right? So they're kind of a stand-in a way for that sense of being threatened by something different.
Well, the Dharma is threatening to something even more basic than the social order. They're 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 more deeply subversive than that, because what they subvert is our very idea of who or what we think we are.
Mhm.
we think we're a person.
Hmm.
Right? We think we're a person. We think that we're this thing, this personality that that dwells in a bag of skin. It's been tagged with a name, right? We've been bagged and tagged. We know who we are, um, and then along comes Dharma and says that's not what you are. Now that freaks people out when to be told you're not a person at all. I explore that pretty deeply in my chapter on Frederick Douglass because he explains how for him to become liberated from slavery, the key for him was literacy. He had to learn to read and find out that there was a wide world outside of his plantation life where he was told he was an object. He was a farming implement. He was a beast of burden. A big fact in his life was that, like the other slaves of the time, he had no idea what his birthday was, and that was deliberate because to give for if you have a birthday, it means you're a person.
Right.
Right. And in fact, even years after he was liberated from slavery and he became this, very prominent citizen after the war, he quested for the rest of his life to find out his birthday and never found out. So his whole thing was to find out I'm a person, and that made it possible. That gave him the confidence and the drive to escape from slavery, to escape from his physical bondage. But then it turns out that the deeper liberation, the liberation from the more fundamental bondage, is to find once you've gone from I'm an object to I'm a person, to go from I'm a person to I'm boundless beingness. I'm
Right.
boundless awareness. I'm that which I experienced, in the garage that afternoon when I was 12 years old. I'm not anything in here. I'm
Right.
out there, which turns out to be really good news because this thing has to, you know, get sick and die.
Right. Right.
So most people, as you say, they don't want the established order, the established idea of their personhood threatened. Well, as long as everything's going pretty good,
Right.
right? But when the thing's breaking down, you go, wait, tell me about that non-personhood thing again.
But it's interesting to think about, Frederick Douglass just wanting to understand his own birthday.
Yeah.
Now we have like ancestry.com to figure out,
Yes.
you know, who was our umpteenth relative on the 32nd, side in the 1600s. So we're never stopped questioning, we're never sort of
Right.
rested in everything that we know about ourselves.
Yeah.
you know?
And researching your genealogy can be fascinating and can be fun. Um, and I think is harmless as long as you have some sense of what you're not, that you're not a person. Otherwise, it can become even a way to get more deeply entrenched in an idea of, I'm this person that is descended from this person, this person, this person, this person.
Yeah. And you're spending present moments focused completely on the past, you know?
That too. That too.
I mean, I think it's interesting, but
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting too that you said near the beginning that you were taking parallel between Captain Ahab and Gatsby and Waiting for Godot.
Hmm.
That all of those characters are pining for the light.
Yes.
You use that expression,
Hmm.
and it almost seems like every character or every central character in a book is pining for something, right? There has to be something missing to have a plot, right?
Right. 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 No one ever wrote, a great novel or a
I
best-selling
was real
novel
happy.
or a novel. Once upon a time, a guy was, was flopped out on his hammock. It was a
Right.
beautiful afternoon. He was enjoying a tall, cool drink, and everything was fine. The end. Drama is conflict. There has to be something that you think you have to get. And I think that the books that become classics
Mm.
Whether it's the Odyssey, Odysseus yearning to go home, or any, that it's us. We're all yearning to go home. I mean, the punchline turns out to be that is home is where the heart is, and not just heart in terms of affection, but the heart of our being. It turns out that Jesus wasn't just fooling around when he said the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's your own ultimate beingness.
Mm.
So yeah, all the great literature is going to somehow show someone pining for something, yearning for something, pursuing something, and if we unpack it, the deeper we look into it, the more we see, oh, what Gatsby thinks he wants is Daisy,
Mm-hmm.
right? The first time we see Gatsby, it's at night. He's standing under the stars. He's in the yard of his uh, home on the North Shore, the Gold Shore of Long Island, with his arms out in this iconic gesture, his arms outstretched, yearning toward the green light across the water, which is we find out later at the end of Daisy's doc. Daisy is the woman that he's convinced, oh, if just I can have Daisy, that'll be it. She's my missing piece. That'll be the solution of my life. Everything will then be fine.
Right.
And of course, if you've been around life long enough, you know that anytime you formulate, once I get X, everything will be fine. That'll be the solution of my life. I'll be fulfilled. You know that that's a formula for disaster.
Right. One thing that's interesting about this book, and it's similar to Cinema Nirvana, your book, looking for enlightenment lessons in movies,
Hmm.
is that you didn't go to the books or the movies that are sort of obviously about spirituality. So
Right,
it's you're going to books where people wouldn't necessarily think there's a Dharma lesson. Um,
right,
and
right.
what is the particular satisfaction or the power of finding a Dharma lesson in a book that was written by somebody who may not have even known about the Dharma?
Yeah, in a way, it's much more fun to go for the high hanging fruit.
Right.
you know, because if you can show that the infinite, that the quest for nirvana is in the places where we would least suspect it, then we know it's everywhere.
Mm.
I love the Mondo, the Zen story about the monk who asks his Roshi, his master, what is the Buddha? Right? Not who is the Buddha, but what is the Buddha? Meaning, really, what is awakening? What is the infinite? What is nirvana? And the master replies not, oh, the Buddha is the beautiful golden temple, or the Buddha is the beautiful sunset, or the Buddha is your baby's smile, all of which would also be valid answers, but not very useful. So instead, he says the Buddha is a pile of cow shit in the middle of the road, right? Because if you can see it there, then you see it everywhere. That's significant. So that's why I love finding nirvana in Moby Dick, in Waiting for Godot. But also, I must say, in this book, there were some writers who were explicitly and very consciously and deliberately pursuing the spirit, and their literature very overtly reflects that. I mean, William Blake, you can't not write about Blake,
Mm.
right?
Right.
If you're going to talk about that universal yearning, you have to have Blake's sunflower, right? The image here is that the sunflower is heliotropic. As the sun travels across the sky, the sunflower turns its head always toward the sun. Sunflower, weary of time, who countest the steps of the sun, seeking after that sweet golden clime where the traveler's journey is done, where the youth pined away with desire, and the pale virgin, shrouded in snow, arise from their graves and aspire where my sunflower wishes to go. I mean, come on, come on. You can't not
Okay, we
have
have
that.
to end the interview now. Doesn't get any better than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you thought about as you were writing this book, the danger of imposing uh, a structure or an idea or a theme onto something. How much did you think about, am I really seeing this here or am I placing it here?
No, I don't worry about that. I just, okay. I'm seeing, there's some. I did occasionally have moments of wondering. Well, here's the way that I work. Here's my work. First of all, I don't write unless I've got a contract and a deadline. I mean, my mind is always, I'm always jotting down little epiphanies and wondering, okay, that should go in some book or some essay or some paragraph somewhere. But I don't really work in a systematic way till I've got a deadline. I'm too lazy for that. It's much too easy to just sit and play my ukulele and hang out. Um, so what I would do is get up in the morning and start writing, and and every day I would tell myself, okay, I'm going to pick up from where I left off writing this chapter. I'm not going to go back and reread it, and I always would wind up going back and rereading it from the start. And rewriting what I had done. So every day, practically, that whatever I'd done so far in the chapter would get rewritten once again. So the stuff is reread for a couple of weeks. Maybe this book took me an average of about 2-3 weeks to get a chapter done.
Mm.
So what is that? 14 to 21 rewrites of everything in the chapter, just refining the language, refining the language. One of the main things I found out about writing, and it's taken me a long time to get this, is that whenever I start writing, I think, oh man, this sucks. This is, I may as well stop and I can't do this. And that's one of the reasons I need a contract, because now I'm obligated. I've got to deliver the thing. And what I keep find out again and again is, oh yeah, if you keep writing through and rewriting through the stuff that sucks, it starts to suck less and suck less. And after a while, hey, it's pretty good. So I would do that for a couple, 2-3 weeks, and then have the chapter as finished as I could do it on my own. And then I would sit down with Yafa, my wife, who, as you know, she's just a superb editor of documentary film. So she's got this great editor's ear, and so she would be my first reality check. Is this stuff going to make sense to another human being? And
Mm-hmm.
she likes me. She's prejudiced. She likes me a lot. That's why she married me. But she's still, got a good critical ear. And if it would work for her, okay, I would leave it. And she'd always give me some notes, and then I rewrite. And eventually, it all went off to my editor, and okay, it was working for him. And now it's been out for a little more than a month, and I find, oh, okay, it seems to be working for some other people.
So you feel like that whole process has refined any potential for seeing things that aren't there.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, some stuff is always going to be more of a reach than others.
Mm.
Uh, um, and I can. There's certain places where I know, okay, this is, this is hard to argue with. This is why when I'm pushing it a little bit more, but I don't care. I have it's if I can have enough fun with it, and if I can get the reader to have fun along with me, and if I don't take it seriously, and I make it, I hope I make it clear, I'm not saying any of this stuff is definitive. I'm not saying, first of all, we've already made this clear. I'm not saying that this is what the author had in mind. And then in that case, okay, what does it mean for something to be there or not be there? It's like looking at a diamond. It's got all these facets, right? You look at it this way, okay, the light bounces through it this way, you turn it this way. Now the light bounces through it a completely different way.
Another thing that I this book made me think about, I've thought about a lot before, is the author's story and how that can affect how
Yeah.
you view the book, and
Yeah.
so you do get into the author's stories a lot in your book, as you sort of switch back and forth sometimes between the book and the author. uh,
Mm-hmm.
but the author is yet another story, with another drama. um,
Right.
is
Right.
it, what is the potential of that to sort of cloud what's really beautiful and clear there?
To cloud
Yeah.
what's beautiful and clear. Um, uh,
Or to illuminate.
yeah. Well, I'd say there's two extremes that don't work in this particular regard. Um, One is, what do they call it, the biographical fallacy, uh, where you say, oh, okay, this thing in Gatsby, this is about Fitzgerald's unrequited yearning for this such and such woman, I forget her name, before he married Zelda. Right, that's what it's about. And then if we can read this and we go, aha, now we're on to Fitzgerald. We know what that book is really about. We've got it pegged. We've got it reduced to something we can wrap our little mind around. In this case, a little piece of gossip. Right.
Right.
Um, there's so much written about, oh, is Hamlet about Shakespeare's feelings about his young son whose name was Hamnet,
Hmm.
a variant of Hamlet, and how much of this is about his resentment of his wife, Anne Hathaway, and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, now we know what it's about. Boom, we close it, we close the book, we close our mind. So that's one extreme that's just, I think it's not conducive to joyously relishing literature.
Right.
Okay. Now, the other far extreme is, um, what was it called? This was a big trend in the academia in, I think, the 50s, the 60s. I think it was
Textual.
form criticism or whatever it was. It was the one where he said you can't look at all at the author and the author's work. It has to be just the the thing, the object, completely taken out of that context,
Right.
speaking for itself. Um, but to try to read Huckleberry Finn completely divorced from the fact that Mark Twain or Samuel Clemens did in fact grow up in a Mississippi River town in in Missouri in the 1830s, like Huck Finn, that he saw slavery firsthand, that he had these ambivalent feelings about it, and so forth. Is I mean, to me, it reduces my enjoyment.
Hmm.
It's all about enjoyment. I say this in the introduction to the book. If it's not fun, what's the point?
Hmm.
So to me, it's finding somewhere the golden middle path between those two extremes. And in some chapters of the book, I talk more about the author's life than in others. I say very little about Rogers and Hammerstein, just because in some cases the author is much more interesting.
Now, this book was really shaped by you teaching
Yes.
literature, and a lot of these books to
Mm-hmm.
high school students,
Yep.
most of whom were probably not into the Dharma.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do you think that shaped your view of, the significance of these books and the themes in them?
I was so fortunate, to have the opportunity to come back for 33 years and, okay, teach Huck Finn yet again, teach Gatsby yet again, teach the poetry of Emily Dickinson yet again. And unless you're completely phoning it in, you're seeing deeper and deeper into these works. And then meanwhile, I'm doing my own meditation. I'm teaching meditation. I'm going off on retreats with these wonderful lamas and rishis during the summer break and the Christmas break. So naturally, these dots started to get connected. But also, I think teaching high school was very valuable to my ability to convey this stuff in a lively way. To keep hormone crazed 15-year-olds
Right.
right engaged with Chaucer. You got to do some pretty slick tap dancing. Uh, and I mean, that's the thing that I've been very pleased to hear from people reading the book, is saying, yeah, it's lively, it's fun, it's not like dusty academia. In a way, there was a brief moment of I was just remembering this the other night, that, oh yeah, there was this moment in my life when I was filling out applications to go to graduate school in literature. And yeah, I think I applied to Berkeley. Was there somewhere else? And what happened to those applications? I don't even remember. I don't remember if I sent them in or if I got rejected or changed my mind or what. I think probably I got rejected. And I think at least, and I know for some people that's a great thing, but for me it was a blessing because I'm not burdened with that, with the PhDs. Usually, the cliche about graduate school is that you write your dissertation and you get to know more and more about less and less. And because I've just remained kind of a you know happy-go-lucky generalist, just making the stuff work for high schoolers,
Right.
that I think that's worked for this book.
And this is your thesis.
That's my there's my thesis. Really, this thing was gestating for over 45 years. I knew for that long I was one day going to have to write a book like this, and just it kept not being the right time, and finally I was with the right publisher, New World Library. This is my first book with them. A wonderful editor, Jason Gardner, who was just so deft at encouraging my best ideas and gently talking me down from my really bad ideas, of which I had several. So yeah, it just kind of came together.
Well, the book is great, Dean. I really, really loved it, and I think it's a great mixture of your Dharma teachings and these wonderful books that you really help us understand better. So
No, thank you. It in a way it was like I realized someone had to write a book like this. Something that happens, I mean, you know this in the publishing industry when you're pitching a nonfiction book to various potential publishers. You write a proposal, and one of the things you have to do is like, okay, what else is out there in the market that is at all similar to this,
uh-huh.
and how is yours different? And there wasn't anything like this. The closest thing to this was a book written, God, in the 40s or 50s by, the name escapes me now. He was a Brit, and it was Zen in English literature,
Hmm.
and it was written at a level of, it was kind of so deep into the Zen sensibility and the kind of a graduate school sensibility of the literature, that it was just nothing like what I was doing here.
Well, that's because you're unique.
I'm unique, just like everyone else.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Dean. Really great to talk to you, and best of luck with the book and everything else.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
The Story Talks Back is produced and hosted by Dave Stanton. The music you're hearing now was written and performed by Christopher Daydream. The theme music at the beginning of our show is an excerpt from Play by Merlin Twelfthooven, performed by Cronus Quartet as part of their 50 for the Future series. Please subscribe to the Story Talks Back on Podbean and check us out on Instagram. See you next time.